Hello everyone. I'm recording this message on June 26th. This is intended for community corrections entities to have an explanation of how to use their financial report. I'm going to use an Excel spreadsheet and just kind of fill it out as I go, so this will be really informal and hopefully go well. If you have any questions after this, feel free to reach out to your program director and they'll be glad to help you. On your screen, you can see the financial report. I'm in Excel right now. You're going to fill in the shaded areas, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start by filling in a date. Notice that the period ending is already supplied. There's tabs across the bottom here for every month. And then we'll talk separately about this 13th statement. Reporting entity, please include your county name and your entity. And so if you're probation or jail treatment or whatever. But please include both so we can recognize your reports when you send those in. Please note this year, by the way, we are asking that you send in the Excel spreadsheet, not a PDF file. Every month. Over here we've added fund number, so go ahead and type that fund number in and it'll appear there, and that should populate for the rest of the year, so you'll only enter that on the July statement. County point, you're welcome to add your own county point there. It's not required, but if you choose to, again, those will populate for the whole year. Approved budget goes in this column here under budget and expenditure section. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I got rid of some icons and stuff on your screen. That should look better for you. Anyway, the approved budget goes here. I'm going to make up a budget here and enter that. Once you enter it in July, it populates for the whole year. So go ahead and enter whatever your approved amounts are. Those need to come right off your grant agreement. And like I said, those should only be entered once. This section here, appropriation increase and decrease, that is for if you have a transfer or additional appropriation request form approved. If you do, you'll enter the amount you increased your appropriation and the amount you decreased your appropriation. And the year-to-date balance transfer will populate by itself. So let's say I increased salary by 500 and decreased supplies by 500. Notice all those populate. My year-to-date transfer populates. And my year-to-date budget balance will include those new values. Expenditures, enter whatever your expenditures are for the month for each category. And those will automatically change all the others. Your budget balance will update, and it will tell your percent of funds expended each month. If you enter an amount that is beyond the amount you have budgeted, this will show up in red to point out that you have overspent your budget, and you'll need to do an appropriation transfer request to cover that, or you'll have to do a transfer request to transfer money from PI or somewhere else to cover that deficit, because you can't have a negative here, and your percentage will also go above 100%. Did I cover everything? Up there. Okay, PI, again, your fund number should be entered here. I'm making up these fund numbers. I know they're wrong. County point is optional, but if you want to enter your county point for your reference, you're welcome to do that. Then enter your approved budget for PI here. These numbers don't even make sense, but that's okay. We're just practicing here. If you increase, let me go back so you can see this. Suppose you're going to appropriate money out of PI and put it into the grant. You would take your appropriate decrease here, $2,000, and then increase it here, up in the appropriation increase for grant. Now notice this section at the top here, and let me go down a little further so you can see at other funds. This section is all budget section. Below that is the cash section. When you change the numbers up here, you haven't actually transferred any money out of PI. The grant funds will populate the grant statement, cash statement, which appears to the right over here. It'll show that you had $2,500 transferred in and $500 transferred out, so you'll have a balance of money coming in. But the appropriation here does not change your cash balance on PI. I'll show you in a little bit, but that needs to be included somewhere else. The PI section is very similar to the grant section, so I'm not going to go over that individually and show you, but those are very similar. The same with other funds. Notice on other funds, again, you can put the fund number for each area here. So county general, let's say, is $4,500. User fees, $4,901. But those fund numbers need to be included on the July statement, and those will populate everywhere else. And we would like to see any funds that you have that are supporting the program from any source included here. A total budget, we're not asking for a line item budget, so maybe county general is giving you $7,500. You're budgeting $100,000 of your PI and no supplemental. Or not, I'm sorry, not PI, that's user fees. Let me take that out of there. User fees are fees that you might receive outside of PI, other than PI. This would be for probation, where that you have PI funds and user fee funds that might support the program. Okay, so in the other funds, you're going to show appropriation increases and decreases, so your total budget should be there at all times. Transfer balance, monthly expenditures just in total, how much you've spent, and it'll show your budget balance here. Down below we have the cash section. First, grant fund carryover. We would like for you to go ahead and enter what you have calculated to be your carryover as of the time that you're preparing this form. That might change when the auditors come and do the annual fiscal audit. So say you have $700 in carryover. That would go there, and that's the only place that that affects anything. It doesn't show up anywhere else. Also, IDOC cash received this month. Your first month you should receive 25% of your budget plus 1/12 of the balance. I'm just going to make up a number here to have a, well, let's put more than that in there so we can do some things. So we have a number to work with. So let's say you received $1,500 from DOC this month. You want to enter that on the month that the money actually was put into your fund by your auditor. That's the month that that should be entered. If there's any discrepancies or anything, you would include any of that in the notes section at the bottom of the financial report. So notice here we have cash received for the month, $1,500. We showed a transfer in $2,000 increase, or I'm sorry, I'm not far enough up. We showed a total transfer, $2,500 in and $500 out. And if you go back down, that shows here the $2,500 in and the $500 out. So funds expended is this month's expenditures, and you'll see this number here should always match the number below in the cash section. And then it'll tell you Here, $850. That is the balance that should be sitting in your auditor's fund at the close of this month. If it's different, you should be able to reconcile that by showing maybe some items that are in transit or deposits that haven't been posted. You should be able to show that and reconcile to this balance every month with your auditor. So I'm going to go on down and talk a little bit more about the cash section. This number here, that 850, is real important, so keep looking at that. Sorry, let me get this back. The bottom is the PI cash statement. For July, you're going to enter the beginning balance in your PI for the year and your beginning CTP balance for the year. So I'm saying I've got $500,000 that I started with in PI and $25,000 that I started with in CTP. Then you're going to manually enter the PI you collected for the month and the amount of CTP that you collected for the month. Notice that your PI collected year to date is going to auto-populate. It does that every month, so you don't have to enter that, and your cash received year to date will also auto-populate in CTP. PI transfer this month. Note, remember we put, and let me go back up and show, we put $2,000 here as an appropriation decrease. Well, we actually transferred that $2,000. So I'm going to put PI cash transferred out this month, $2,000, because I put it in my grant fund, which you're not supposed to, well, you're not supposed to do that, but this is just an example. I put, well, there might be cases where you'd have to do that. So I put $2,000 in my transferred out at the bottom. That's the only way to show that your cash balance has actually decreased. Notice if I go up here to PI and say, middle of the year I decide, oh, I need to get a new car. And I didn't appropriate money for that, so I'm going to go to my advisory board and get approval and appropriate $25,000 for a car. Now I already had the money in there, so my cash balance hasn't changed. But I did change the budget. So you'll notice out here, my year-to-date budget balance now shows $30,000, and down below, my cash balance doesn't change. That $25,000 did not affect my cash balances. Only if I actually transferred money in would that change. CTP funds expended this month is just going to go right down here on the cash statement. It doesn't appear above like it used to on the old financial form. So typically that's zero. Most people don't expend money right out of CTP, so that's typically zero. The only time you would have a number there is if you actually wrote a claim directly out of your CTP. Most of the time what you're going to do is go here, CTP transferred out this month, and let's say it's time once a year I transfer all my money. So I'm going to take all my CTP money, $27,500, and I'm going to transfer it in to PI. And that's what I do. I took it out of CTP here and placed it into PI right here. My cash balance has changed for PI. CTP, notice my balance is zero. I emptied out the account. But I didn't make any expenditures. That was a transfer. Finally, at the very bottom, we have a couple percentages. Percent of PI budget collected. So that's going to say my budget for the year for PI, let's go up, is $42,000. And I've collected so far $95,000. So I've collected more than my budget balance. And then they also have percent of expenditures collected, and you can look at that number after that populates. Grant entity, authorized authority signature. Since we're asking you to submit your financial statements as an Excel document, you're not going to be able to manually write your signature on this form. So when you enter your name here, I don't know why I didn't get my first letter. When you enter your name here, that is you telling us that you have looked at this form and approved it. So entering your name there is an approval and an authorized signature, and only the director or the grant entity authority should be entering their name there. Down at the bottom is a very important section. This is appropriations. Appropriations. Additional notes. Put as many notes as possible. If you ever have a transfer request, like in this case, we did do an appropriation change and an appropriation increase, those should be explained down here below in a note. And we would like very thorough notes on the financial reports. Now I'm going to go to August and show you a couple things. First of all, notice the top. You have to enter the date, but the county and all that is already there. Budget and expenditures section. The grant funds already has an approved budget, and the transfers that have occurred so far are already entered here. So you don't have to re-enter those, and you still show a negative balance. So let's say you're going to take, you're not going to use overtime. So you're going to decrease your overtime by $2,000 and increase supplies to cover that overage. Now I've got a transfer in and out here. The year-to-date balance adjusts automatically, and the budget changes automatically. So all I need to do here is enter this month's expenditures in each line item category. I've got my county point and fund number also automatically populated. The same thing is true of PI, where you're going to enter just any appropriation increases and decreases, which should be rare, and the monthly expenditures. So let's go ahead and enter some just so we can look at the bottom. So this month's expenditures, I'm going to say we spent $100 and everything, just to be simple. And for PI, I'm going to do the same thing, just to give us some expenditures to play with. So note our year-to-date expenditures has changed. If I go down, my year-to-date expenditures is $3,250. If I go down to my DOC cash statement, let me go down. Here's my DOC cash statement. And funds expended year-to-date, right there, $3,250. That's automatically going to populate. The transfers in and out have populated, and I've already got $1,500 showing as received because I received that back in July. So that's going to show up. So all I need to do is add my next receipt for August. And down at the bottom, I've already got my beginning balances for CTP and PI. I just have to do what I collected this month. I'm collecting about $100,000 every month and about $2,500 in CTP. And any transfers in and out, if I'm going to lower the cash balance or increase the cash balance through a method other than an expenditure, would go here. My expenditures, sorry about that, my year-to-date PI expenses should come down from above. I have my 600 up here, year-to-date expenditures, PI 600, and that should flow down here and calculate my balance for me. I don't have to calculate anything. The only time I put something in these blue squares is if I did transfers. The only time I put something here is if I expended funds right out of my CTP or transferred the money out of CTP into a different fund. So these will typically be zero. And the final thing I want to talk about is the 13th statement. Again, most of the information here populates. The date of this report is going to be sometime after June 30th of 2019. This report is established to have a place to put all the expenses that are incurred before June 30th, but the auditor doesn't actually post until after June 30th. So you might think of this as encumbrances at the end of the fiscal year that get paid. This doesn't have to be done by any certain date. You might have things still getting paid in November that need to be posted to the financial report's 13th statement. But this statement does allow for expenditures in this month and grant here. PI wouldn't have any 13th statement expenditures. There wouldn't be any appropriation increases or decreases after the fact. These are all after the year's end. You wouldn't have any expenditures here. And so most of it is going to be just expenditures and grant funds. The cash balance, let me go to that here, says negative 750. This cash balance should be the cash balance that's sitting in that fund at the end of the year when you've paid everything out, and that would agree with the amount that needs to be sent back to the DOC as carryover. This number here should never be negative at this point. If it is, a transfer is going to need to be done from another fund, usually PI, into grant to cover the overspending. This would indicate that somewhere you have overspent your budget or you didn't receive all your money. So that's all I have to say about the financial report at this time. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to your program director, and thanks for your time.